Kia ora, comrades. Welcome everybody to Psychic Militancy. My name is Lara Shiha. I'm so excited to have our comrades from Aotearoa here today with us. Bianca, Arama, and Sina are joining us. Before we get started, make sure you like, subscribe, send it to a comrade, tell them we're talking to our Māori comrades about Māori sovereignty and all the cool things we're going to be getting into today. So I'm just going to jump right in. I'm so fucking excited. We've been talking about this since I was in Aotearoa in December. I'm so happy to have you all. So why don't we just start with like, how the fuck are you all doing? There's a lot that has happened since we last saw each other.
Yeah, I'm just really stoked to see you again, Lara. It was beautiful having you here in Aotearoa, to come to the summer school and really ignite people's like political imaginations, and Stephen as well. So it's just really nice to see you, and that's really uplifted me this morning.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, it's Sunday morning for them.
Yep, Sunday morning here. Yeah, kia ora, Lara. It's just, yeah, obviously lovely to see you again, and we're so appreciative of the learnings and the time that we had together here in Aotearoa when you and Stephen were here. I guess, yeah, a lot has happened in such a short amount of time, and so, yeah, really just grappling with what that means for us here in Aotearoa and with the political moment that we're in and the current government that we have here, as well as our Māori movement and the people's movement here in Aotearoa too. So thank you very much for having us today, and yeah, looking forward to our kōrero.
Yeah, me too. Sina!
Kia ora. Oh my gosh. I thought it was in the afternoon, so I thought I'm going to have a late night and sleep in. No, I completely misinformed myself. I'm just mindful that today we honour the people that were slaughtered in the white supremacist terrorist attack in Ōtautahi. So primarily I'm thinking of those people and those whānau today, and also too that was an ultimate act of the violence of white supremacy. So very much tying up what we want to kōrero today. I'm really well. I'm getting fitter, stronger, muscular, and getting back to myself. I'm actually really quite excited about this year politically. I'm really always inspired by the work that Arama and Bianca are doing, and I'm actually excited about our future on the ground and building that.
Getting stronger to kick some fascist white supremacist ass. That's what it's about.
I know we're going to take back the gyms. We have to be fitter. No use moaning about them being fit and training and stuff like that. We need to do the same for our own communities.
That's right. That's right. But you kicked us off, Sina, so I'm inspired by all your work, and I've heard some of it about what you all have been up to. What are some of the struggles on the ground? Sovereignty is a thing that Indigenous folks the world over fight for every single day, and I know that you all do too. But maybe we can start there. Like, there's some folks that might not know what's happening on the ground. I imagine there's things that, I know we've texted about some of the things and some of the demonstrations and some of the struggles that you have done even since we were there. So maybe we can start there. Like, what's the pulse? What's going on? I know that's an expansive question, so wherever you all want to start, I'm all for it.
Māoris have really long, comfortable pauses that are not uncomfortable for other people, sorry. So you might have to like tag people, because otherwise we'll give like a good 3 to 5 seconds before someone will speak. Maybe just to bring people up to speed a little bit. We had the rise to power of our extremely far-right government, and then that kind of catalysed all sorts of action on the ground, and we had a huge hikoi, the biggest protest in New Zealand history, where Māori walked the length of the North Island to Parliament to oppose a Treaty Principles Bill. So that was this huge occasion. There was kind of, revolutionary potential in the air, and people were really excited about that. But what we've seen is that those internal contradictions within those who led the group have now kind of meant that a lot of the energy there has just turned to kind of infighting between different kind of factions within that. And really it was those contradictions around political parties being too closely involved, Te Pāti Māori in particular, that then kind of had a political party try to capture that revolutionary potential and kind of funnel it into the polling booth for their own party. And so that's kind of very demobilizing for the movement, but that's not to say that all of that revolutionary potential is not still there. It's just that it's without a strong, clear vision and leadership at the moment. And maybe Bianca wants to kind of pick up on some of the protests and things that have happened since that big march.
Yeah, I think just in terms of, you know, the response that we saw with the hikoi. And so for people who don't know what a hikoi is, it is the first hikoi that we had here in Aotearoa was in 1975 for the Land March, and it's where our people walk from the very top of the North Island and gain momentum through the different tribal territories throughout on the pathway to Parliament, and it ends down in Pōneke, down in Wellington. And so that one was incredibly historic and led to some significant kind of changes within Parliament as well, with the establishment of the Waitangi Tribunal. And then in 2004, we had the foreshore and seabed hikoi, which is when the government at the time, the Labour-led government at the time, was once again undermining our treaty rights. And then another 20 years later, in 2024, we had the hikoi mō te tiriti, which was specifically against this current right-wing or far-right coalition government that we have here. And with this particular government, it's just been an all-out assault on all fronts against Māori, and against women, against our takatapui rainbow trans community, against the disabled community. It's just been quite unprecedented, actually, in terms of how quickly they've managed to roll out these extremely harmful, legislation. And it just shows us as well that within a settler colonial government, they do have the ability to roll back things that have taken 40 years, decades and decades of work by our people, to kind of see some results of that work. And then with a new government, they can just roll all of that back in the space of around 18 months. So the hikoi that resulted from the mobilization around the Treaty Principles Bill, which was an attempt to redefine the principles of Te Tiriti, which is our founding document signed in 1840, was huge. And so it started again at the top of the North Island and ended up with over 100,000 people on the doorsteps of Parliament. And it was incredible, as Arama said, just to see how ready our people were. We hadn't had a hikoi for 20 years. So it was just incredible to see how many of our people came out, but also, non-Māori in Aotearoa who want to see Te Tiriti justice as well. And if anything, it was a great rehearsal, but it has been disappointing, definitely, to see that a lot of that has dissipated for various reasons. And we really just don't have the time, especially in an election year, to be dealing with the ongoing dynamics of that. So we're at a pretty critical moment for us as Māori here in Aotearoa in many ways. But the organising has been strong, particularly our connection to the Palestine movement. Been on the ground here in Tāmaki, Makaurau, Auckland every week. I think this week was a 127th week of rallies and marches consecutively for Palestine, as well as supporting our other communities as well, our Rainbow Trans Takatapui communities, our climate justice movement, Māori protest movements, and so on. So there's been a lot of power that's been built from a grassroots level with connecting with our unions and other movements. as we find ourselves all on the streets as a result of this government. So in a way, this kind of real blatant attack against us is really just stabbing us in the front instead of the back. Like, at least this government is honest about their agenda, and we can see it very clearly. But it also means that, you know, for us, we have made just incredible connections and built incredible trust. And yeah, feels like our movement really is starting to gain momentum. So that part of it is extremely kind of hopeful and inspiring for me.
Sina, I know you have some shit to say about this.
I'm really happy because to see the implosion of bourgeois Māori politics fucking go up in flames. I'm inspired by the work on the ground that Bianca and Arama are doing, because that's how the Te Tiriti was put on the modern political agenda a generation ago, by the movement on the streets, by mobilising our grassroots people who had nothing to lose, all for what? To put a bunch of middle-class, power-hungry wankers into power. Exactly at the same time, materially, while our people are suffering the most. Yeah? Hats off to Bianca and Kaiāwhina for their unwavering solidarity for Palestine, but also walking the talk in your own community, feeding our most needy and vulnerable, not from a position of charity, but from a position of political solidarity and tautoko. And for me, now that's where it's at. I'm not going to enable any like half pie, can't get a job anywhere, want to be a politician, so go to Parliament. You're not serving the people. There is no humility in what those people do for us anymore. There is no respect for the lives of our greatest revolutionaries who died to see our people politically advance. To what? Another fucking election? I'm sorry, not sorry. This is why I'm technically retired. So out of respect to you, Arama, and yourself, I've come back to like put in my negative trolley Twitter discourse, because I'm over bourgeois, Māori, Pākehā, whatever politics. People are getting blown to shit in Gaza. Gaza was a laboratory for Iran. They're fucking all that going in, and then we're sitting around talking about, oh, we've got another election coming up. No, fuck, we're at the crucial, an anti-imperialist moment, and we're still mucking around. Yeah? We're still mucking around. Our people have an appetite to be politically radicalized at this moment in time. And I think Gaza, the awareness of Gaza and all the work that you've been doing, Bianca, has helped facilitate that consciousness. We can't let that get funneled off into some bourgeois fucking soul crushing little crumbs from the table. We all have nothing to lose at the moment.
Yeah, those counterinsurgency sort of ways that are they capture folks, and they like, I'm just thinking, Arama, you started us off by saying some of that energy has dissipated, and I'm hearing that. Like, I heard that when I was on the, you know, in community with you all in person, about the ways in which you've seen some of that be captured. Certainly it's a logic that repeats itself across the board in struggles. But I'm wondering if either of you have more to add to that.
Yeah, just tautoko everything that Sina has just said. Like Matis just mentioned, she really knows how to bring the analysis that cuts through all the BS. Yeah, and as Sina was saying, with everything that we're facing and we're seeing globally, it has really brought this moment of clarity, where for a long time it's kind of been liberal politics that have really been dominated the political environment. For people who haven't been here, it's very much like Canada. There's a lot of like identity politics and kind of solidarity statements and those types of things that happen without any kind of vision beyond capitalism. And so what we have seen by being in community with people like yourself, Lara, is just that development of clarity that can only come through militant struggle is starting to really influence politics on the ground here. And I think it means we are seeing that shift where, a lot of things are breaking apart and a lot of things are coming back together. So depending on which way you're looking at it, you might see like big rifts happening on the left, for example, and it's like, no, that's actually the left fracturing from the liberals that you're seeing. And so with that there is a lot of potential. So there's a lot of kind of chaos and disarray, but out of that, there is space for new projects to be born. And yeah, like Sina was saying, obviously we're not at the forefront of the global struggle by any stretch of the imagination, but for what we're seeing here in Aotearoa, it is that clarity that you're seeing from people who are on the ground and connected in with those movements elsewhere.
Yeah, I'll maybe just add a little bit to Sina's kōrero as well. And I think that a lot of particularly our rangatahi, our young people, are feeling the same. And what's been encouraging for me is that, you know, the ones that I see as our really strong leaders who are appearing are, they are increasingly understanding that the settler government is not the way that we are going to achieve our liberation. And so the purpose, or what the government tries to kind of entice Māori into, is that, you know, well, if you can have a seat at the table, or if we have these Māori seats, then this is the pathway to change. And it's just becoming clearer and clearer, particularly as our young people have a greater understanding of geopolitics, and that Palestine is the tip of the spear of settler colonial violence, and understanding Western imperialism. It's just having such a huge influence. And it's also shown us just how incredibly exhausting and inadequate liberals are in response to fascism, which is what we're facing here and abroad. And in a way, it is good that liberals have somewhere to funnel to in terms of wanting to join particular parties and pursue that route. But we know that in the times that we're facing now, with the blatant all-out attacks against Māori, what we're seeing globally, with the rise of the far right, here and abroad, that we have a clear understanding and vision for not only our own liberation, but what to then. And we've seen the revolutionary potential of people coming out and mobilizing on the streets, and that gaining momentum. And I think that what we're seeing within communities on the ground, and the people who are choosing not to go into parliamentary politics, are some of the most incredible kind of revolutionary minds that I can see within our community, and are very thankful for that. That, you know, what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank, and you know, the live streaming of genocide that we've been seeing has been really hitting home for so many of our people, and that the current kind of system here is not compatible with a livable future in so many ways. So feeling like there's good momentum building and awareness and consciousness raising that is desperately needed, and the urgency to act on that as well.
So what are the channels of action that you all are like working on right now? So if there are folks, there are folks that will choose the parliamentary track, as we've been seeing, and we know that that's a larger project. That's a global project. That's the project of capture, counterinsurgency, whatever we want to call it. And then there's like, all right, let's throw down, and enough is enough. And, you know, every version of compromise that Indigenous people have been coerced into over history, right? And this is where, whether it's Turtle Island or Aotearoa or Palestine, we see this over and over again. And I agree with you. I think there is a certain level of refusals that people are engaging with at a higher rate and with more clarity, because the good faith is gone. Like there's no pretense anymore from folks. But maybe it would be helpful to let people know, what are the channels that are being taken up? What are some of the things that folks on the ground are engaging with as they take up this question of sovereignty with the militancy that it deserves?
We have whole sections about, our community. Thank you, Bianca, for bringing up the F word. I think that we are not like really clearly articulating that we're living in a fascist moment. Yeah? fascism is already here, motherfuckers. And we're like tiptoeing around. Let's have another election, or let's think of a nice little liberal thing. No, they're here and they're in power. And I think the laser focus of that reminds me of Berlin and Nazi Germany. And who did they squash first? The queers, the trans people, our gay whānau. That's what's happening exactly now. And I think after seeing you in Auckland for Pride, Bianca, and my old queer family, and quite conscious of the machine that is coming to crush us all, and the lack of urgency. I don't know, why is everybody so asleep? In my world, because I've removed myself deliberately from politics and activists, my world is the gym bro world. I go to the gym with a lot of young white men, yeah? To build community, to like reach out across the divide, to stop the polarization and the fucking drive of the right. Very consciously and very cleverly to keep us divided. And how did I reach through these young white men? I fed them. I fed them. Yeah. I cooked them kai, which is a basic of our manaakitanga, of our cultures all over the Pacific. That sparks off conversation. That changes a lot of minds, and then they can't dismiss me because I can lift heavier than they can. So we can think of like big strategies and stuff, but we're not communicating to our neighbours. We don't know who we fucking live next to. We're not kind to each other. We're not like living in community. Building community is revolutionary, and I see and so inspired by the Kaiāwhina stuff that Bianca and Arama are doing. That's where the revolution is at for me, because these two incredible women are like walking their talk, building capacity, revolutionary potential, consciousness, and keeping us safe and feeding us at the same time. I fucking love the way we roll.
And Sina didn't mention, but she has been on the front lines for decades herself, and
retired.
She's retired now, but you know, she was the skipping school to go to, I don't know, was it Polynesian Panther Party meetings or Uri-o-Hau, yeah, our Nuclear Free and Independent Pacific movement. So, and she's also spent many decades training up new generations of anti-fascist organisers as well. And so it's really on, you know, carrying on, I guess, the legacy that Sina has really laid the ground for. And yeah, that's kind of where I would say Bianca kind of comes in with the work that she's led with Kaiāwhina. I'll let you describe that.
Yeah. Kia ora. Yeah, obviously the community kai aspect of things is incredibly important. We've just seen a huge increase in homelessness, which is disproportionately affecting Māori. So the numbers in the Auckland CBD area, for example, have gone up around 400% under this current government. And so there is a community kai project that Kaiāwhina helps with. And so that's just offering free, warm, nutritious meals to anyone who needs them. And on any day, there can be around 150 that are coming through for that. But what that is also doing is building up our trust and relationships with our street whānau and with our rough sleepers, because this current government has also just gone to the bottom of the barrel and punching down on the absolute most vulnerable in our communities, which are our homeless and our rough sleepers. And so they're bringing in legislation which is called move-on orders, which we kind of see a little bit similar to what happened in DC when they started to move people on, and then it progressed into ICE. And so these move-on orders mean that the police will have a new power to move homeless people on from wherever they are sleeping. And if they don't move on, then they can face a $2,000 fine or 3 months imprisonment. And so the relationship building and the trust and the connection that we're making with those of our people who are facing, you know, who don't have a home is one kind of part of the work that we're doing. And so not only challenging what this government is doing, but talking about housing justice, and that there is no housing justice without te tiriti justice and what are our solutions as a community. And so one of the responses that we have coming up at the end of this month is so many people that are offering that wraparound support, all coming together on one evening with anyone who is experiencing houselessness in Auckland coming together and showing that we are a united front, that we are a display of solutions for our communities, and that we're not waiting for government funding. We're not waiting for permission. We're not just kind of calling out these all-out attacks that they're making on our communities, but we are putting into action what we need to see for each other. The other part I think that is good to also mention is that a lot of people are doing really good work around raising awareness about capitalism, and as well as Māori capitalism, which is counter to mana motuhake and tino rangatiratanga. So the realization of our sovereignty, which we never ceded here in Aotearoa, and some of the land and ocean-based movements that we can see from Māori within their tribal territories across the country, and again asserting rangatiratanga, so asserting that sovereignty over the whenua, the moana, the kaitiakitanga that comes along with that, and the ability to secure somewhere for our whānau to go back to. So I think there is the shift away from the sense of, we've got to go through these processes, or it's only going to happen once the government allows this to happen for us, but people stepping into their own power and their own rangatiratanga in that way. And so, yeah, the consciousness and the awareness raising that those movements create is powerful. I think another one that has been extremely important for us has been the connection in with the unions and raising awareness of, that this is a class struggle, and the power of the workers' movement as well. And that's been really key to some of the large mobilizations that we've seen. I think the largest protest people taking to the streets in Auckland that I've ever seen was probably the March for Humanity, calling for the government to sanction Israel. Around 50,000 people came out for that, and there was just broad support across faith, unions, different organizations. So it kind of feels a little bit scattered at times, but then when you zoom out and get a kind of broader picture of everything that's happening in the moment, and when we have political moments that call for us all to come together, that's when that power is really kind of evident, particularly in the optics of it that we see when we're able to capture people and the enormity of people mobilizing in those moments. So yeah, I also just want to quickly reflect on the kind of parliamentary politics as well, and that it is, even for me, I know that that's not our pathway. We can't vote our way to liberation, but also making sure that our people don't just kind of completely remove from using the option to vote, because the reality is with this government has just been an absolute disgrace on the world stage, even if we're looking beyond the attacks on us here in this country. But our foreign affairs minister went over to the UN and couldn't even recognize Palestine as a state. They're thinking about Aotearoa, New Zealand joining AUKUS, which is the US, Australia, UK military pact. There's an FBI office that has just been set up this term down in Wellington. We're part of Five Eyes, and we're just, very clearly moving away from a progressive, independent foreign policy to aligning with Israel and the US. So the work that people are doing in communities to bring together a strong anti-war movement here in Aotearoa is, it's urgent that we need that, but it also, we have the bones and the structure of that from the generations before us, and the movement for a nuclear-free and independent Pacific here in Aotearoa, which was massive, particularly in the 70s and 80s. And so, there's a lot of work that's been doing in different ways throughout different communities, just in Tāmaki Makaurau, but across the country. But all of that kind of coming together is the moment that we're in at the moment, and what that looks like kind of moving forward to get this far-right government out, but also to propel us further on our journey for the realisation of a flourishing and just future that has te tiriti justice at the core for Māori here in Aotearoa.
Well, we were so moved by the things that we were seeing that you all were working on. And I think sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it does feel like there's like, it's hard to see all the things. And then we come in, we get sort of parachuted in and look at all the things you all are doing that are based in community. And it feels
Paragliding
so... Yes, paragliding. I missed an opportunity there. Thanks, Arama, for that. But Kaiāwhina came up a couple times and we got to see you all in action. Do you want to sort of explain who folks are? Like, what's the orientation? How did it emerge? What are some of the things that folks are engaged in to do the work that you were just laying out, to pay attention to the most vulnerable in the community, to make sure that class politics are not missing, to make sure that the anti-imperialist sort of thread cuts across any of these struggles?
Yeah, so Kaiāwhina is a community care and self-defense group that formed in October 2023. And it was a response to the to the mobilization that we were seeing here in Auckland for Palestine after the Al-Aqsa flood, and our community instantly came out the weekend after that in a huge rally and march here in Auckland. And so we, as activists who have been on the ground for years in Auckland and are familiar with far-right actors and Zionists, we just knew that they would come out to cause harm and to counter-protest what was happening. So we formed very quickly, knowing that we would need to be organised, that we would need to be disciplined, and that we would need to be really focused on caring for our communities, and particularly our Muslim and Palestinian whānau, who were seeing, just the violence that was happening in Gaza. So yeah, so we came together pretty quickly and were able to just focus on the safety of our protests on the ground. So we offer marshal and medic services, and we are able to identify white supremacists, far-right actors, and then also members within a kind of Christo-fascist group that we have here in Aotearoa called Destiny Church, which I'm hoping Arama can share a bit more about maybe after this. So yeah, and we're intersectional. So we obviously have kind of been born out of the Palestine movement, but we support the Māori protest movement, our unions. We support the climate justice movement, Māori activations in different communities, as well as the Rainbow Trans and Takatapui community, who you saw. Actually, you came to a very big march. I think you'd only been in the country 1 or 2 days, and that was in response to another attack around the ban on puberty blockers for our trans whānau. So there's quite a big group of us now. There's around 120 of us that are a part of the Sropu, and numbers can kind of fluctuate depending on what it is that we're involved with. But during that time, we have just built the most incredible trust and relationships, and our key kind of guiding values are around being having integrity, always speaking the truth, being disciplined, being principled, making sure that we are keeping our community safe. We have a saying, which is, who keeps us safe, we keep us safe, because we know from my whole lifetime of seeing different Māori protests, and when we've been defending our bay from developers and capitalists who are trying to privatize the commons to make $100 million off our ocean, that the police are not ever there to protect us or to keep us safe or serve our communities. They're there to protect developers and to protect big business. And so we can't expect any different when we are on the front lines with our communities. And one of the ways that we do that is we focus on de-escalation, using different tactics to be able to particularly stop this they call themselves a church. They're more of a, well, they're actually worse than a cult. I'll let Arama speak to them more. But different tactics to be able to stop them from capturing really harmful content for a global far-right extremist audience that engages with it. And also branched out, obviously, into supporting feeding communities as well with the Community Kai project. So we have wānanga where we come together to go, actually at Piritahi Marae, where you came to, we have our wānanga there. And that's just an opportunity for us to go into really understanding settler colonial violence, colonialism, Western imperialism. We go over understanding, how the far right is operating in Auckland and other parts of the country, things like that, so that people are really well informed. And I think that kind of education and sharing of knowledge, particularly from our young people, is really needed. And then we can, just put our values into action when we're actually on the ground with each other in the front lines and focusing on keeping our people safe. And so we've consistently been doing that for 2.5 years now, and it's just growing with strength. And we very much take inspiration from other movements around the world that have been focused on, community care and community self-defense. As well as some of the examples that we've seen here in Aotearoa during the 70s and 80s. So we're very much a new kind of movement, but our kind of whakapapa connections, our link into other things here in Aotearoa kind of go back quite far. So yeah, but I thought I'd just maybe hand it to Arama, just to talk, maybe expand on.
I wouldn't want to steal the opportunity from Sina if Sina wants to take the first shot.
I don't know about that mofo. Far out. No, you go, Arama.
Both of you. I want both of you to talk about this.
Well, I think Sina's been on the front lines, fighting these people. Oh, can you tell them about some of your organising that you've done?
Okay. I haven't been able to stand Brian Tamaki for what, 30 years?
Okay, let me set
and
it up
I'm
for
kind of
you.
always hated for that past 30 years how he wormed his way into the Māori establishment, and because the Māori homophobia, nobody told him to piss off. He then started up like this cult, far right Christian, right little money laundering church cult thing, trying to capture our young men from prison. So we thought in Dunedin, I live in the bottom of Te Waipounamu in Ōtepoti. This guy's not coming into our city. We're not letting the man in the South Island try and grow his thing. So we probably for like 3 years non-stop just organised the community against them. They would come out with 30 people. We would come out with 500. To just completely humiliate them. Every time Brian Tamaki and his little Māori Barbie wife landed, would be protesting outside their hotels. So nobody wants them to stay here in Dunedin. Nobody will put them up anymore. The last election, he set up I can't remember which political party. So they had their live stream launch in the Edgar Centre in Dunedin. So I picked out a protest that gay men had done in London in Trafalgar Square during the height of the AIDS crisis, a kissing. So we gathered 20 gay, lesbian, trans women, and they gave me the megaphone. We got in there and they had a kissing in front of the Tamakis who fucking froze. Their faces froze. The little shitty guy from Christchurch tried to push me over, but our trans sister's built, she's like, what, nearly 7 foot tall, and flicked him off like a fly. And then we left before the police came up. It was hilarious. It was fun. It was like in their face. They're not used to being, they're used to running roughshod off people, so they're not used to being opposed. But then that kind of set in motion them deliberately targeting and disrupting and spreading hate against our Takatapui community as their main political feature. So I kind of love it how you guys in Taranaki, Bianca, have neutralised that to a certain extent. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to think we could. I'm sure we can, but it's going to take some movement building. But maybe for people who don't know Destiny Church, because there'll be people all over the world, nobody kind of, yeah, some people might not have heard of them before. They are a Christian church who often
Actually modelled off
sorry.
the Baptist movement
Yeah,
in the south of the...
prosperity gospel shit.
Yeah.
Mm.
He describes somebody called Eddie Long from Georgia as his spiritual father, and this is somebody who was later convicted of grooming young men and like laundering money from the church. So this is the type of inspiration he gathers. So yeah, that's kind of the foundation of it. There is that link to movements in the US, and as Sina's mentioned, they kind of started off politically targeting and, you know, pulling off these big stunts for an international audience by kind of punching down to the queer community. But over time, like, one good thing I'll say about Destiny Church is that they're an amazing moral compass because they point in the opposite direction of freedom. And they've kind of gone after different communities over time. But they have been, for the first 2 years, they were like a constant presence counter-protesting the Palestine rallies. And people may have even seen like headlines and images of them doing like haka as well, with Israel flags and you know, kind of trying to spread just visually through these types of images an idea that there is Indigenous solidarity with Zionism. And so this is kind of feeding into this like Indigenous turn that we see Israel making in terms of trying to legitimize settler presence in Palestine through these claims of indigeneity, like these retrospective claims of indigeneity that we're seeing more recently. So yeah, so Sina's been fighting these guys on the ground for a long time, and then Bianca organized a huge protest to counter their hatred because their violence has escalated over time. They kind of went from painting over rainbow crossings and you know, just counter protesting with you know, loud hailers and kind of doing motorbike protests. They're kind of like a motorbike gang as well. They wear big crosses on their back. They actually remind me of the Christian gangs that kind of were attracted to like the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, you know, that we're seeing on the ground there. So yeah, they've escalated from that type of street theatrics into actually storming a library where there was a trans children's event, a trans art, a drag king, I think it was giving a children's demonstration, and yeah, they stormed it, and I think it resulted in multiple charges of indecent assault and assault. So yeah, we've seen an escalation, and so because of that, and they're following the tactics in Australia as well with like anti-immigration marches and confronting our Sikh community as well. When our Sikh community had a march, they countered it with yeah, aggressive theatrics there as well, and so that kind of led into
to England, London to support Tommy Robinson and those sorts of fucking far right fascist Christian politics.
Yeah, yeah, they're definitely escalating in terms of, yeah, they're still very much, you know, pulling the stunts. So they did a big stunt down in Auckland where they burnt several flags. They burnt you know, the Palestine flag, the rainbow flag, the trans flag, just like all of the flags, the Sikh flag and so on in the middle of the road, and had all these theatrics of haka around them. And so the numbers in terms of their membership of the church have been dropping over more recent years. And I think that Māori media and actually mainstream media in a sense too have been doing more kind of coverage of exposing what they're about and the harm that they've created on certain individuals. And I just want to make it very clear from us that we are absolutely condemn, obviously, Brian and Hannah Tamaki, who are the leaders of this church, but to the members of the church or the survivors of this so-called church, that you know, our people, Māori, will always be here to, you know, as somewhere to land for those people if they are able to get out of there or survive being members of it. And so the escalation that we saw at the Te Atatu Library with the Rainbow Storytime was just absolutely horrendous. A public library where a large group of them stormed the library, went upstairs and barged their way into where there was a children's reading going on was horrific, and the use of haka during that as well, and the assaults that happened against Kaiāwhina and against members, staff of that library. And so there's actually a trial coming up where 7 Destiny Church members have assault charges against them, and I believe there was one of indecent assault that happened during that storming of the library. So we are well aware that they are escalating, that they will use violence, and there's pretty much nowhere off limits if they're willing to storm a public library. And there doesn't seem to be really much consequence for what they are doing. And I just want to also acknowledge that today is 7 years since the horrific shooting at the Christchurch mosques, and where 51 people lost their lives and around 90 more people were injured during that. And I just want to, you know, kind of link in Destiny Church there as well, and in particular what they are currently focusing on, which is anti-immigration, which we know also fed into some of the motivation of this white supremacist who is responsible for what happened 7 years ago, and the targeting of the Sikh community here in Auckland through the weaponization and misuse of our haka, which tends to go viral. So they're capturing this content to go out to a global audience. And we know the power of our haka, right? We saw Hana do the haka in Parliament when we were halfway through the hikoi, the mass mobilization to fight for our treaty. And that, you know, that turned her into a kind of instant global superstar with the power of the haka and her tearing up that legislation. And people in some kind of a way can feel, even if they can't understand what is being said, they can feel what is being expressed in those moments. And so Destiny Church are misusing this, and Arama has a good way of saying it, where the members of Destiny Church are like the twice colonized. You know, they've not only been colonized by the Crown, but also by Brian and Hannah Tamaki as well. And I just think
quoting Georgina Bayer there.
Georgina Bayer. All right. Absolute legend. Yeah, so we are seeing this kind of fascist paramilitary in a way. We're seeing what they're doing in terms of their formations and trainings with their young people in these churches. And so you have, a full kind of forced fascist group with a whole lot of Māori and Pacific young people, that are kind of the face of it. And that footage that they're able to capture is just going global, and they're getting their validation from, white supremacists and far-right actors and fascists worldwide. And it's a gross misrepresentation of our people, and also that they have very, very little support here in New Zealand. So yes, they are definitely one of the ones that we're up against, and they just had a huge march for, I can't remember what they called it now, but we organised our own, which was larger in numbers than theirs, and we had it not far from where theirs was. But for the first time, we were able to dominate the media on that day, and just take some of the focus off them, and talk about how, the diversity of our communities is what makes us a strong and flourishing and thriving country, and that people are welcome here. And particularly for us as tangata whenua, we have solidarity and real relationships with our Sikh communities, you know, with our Muslim community, Palestinian whānau, with our Sudanese whānau have been activating here, and they are absolutely part of us. And when we unite and come together with everyone that they're attacking, they are severely outnumbered. And so that kind of unity and strength of aroha and love together was, really powerful in countering what they were trying to communicate with their hate out to the nation and out to the world on that day. But in terms of the use of our haka, that's still, we've got a way to go there, and we need our Māori haka exponents and those that are obsessed with kapa haka to actually come out and to not allow this to continue on a global stage as well. So yeah.
That's actually one of the things I wanted to see if all of you could sort of help locate for folks. One of the things I learned when I was in community with you all in Aotearoa was that there's a long I mean, we know that fascists will appropriate anything, and they will do it for particularly the spectacle, for the claims of authenticity, for the legitimacy that comes with it. But like the history of the appropriation of the haka has a particular history for you all, and like what's the significance for folks that might not know, like why this is so offensive that this is being done. I think some of us can probably conjecture, but I'd love to hear from your experiences, like over time, the moments in which this has been done and why this feels like a particular inflection point, and why this is just so horrendous to think about the appropriation of the haka in this way.
Arama, I was wondering if you could maybe just with that reflect on, you know, what happened with the engineering students at the University of Auckland.
That's what I was thinking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Sina, would you like to talk to that?
I'm not really a kapa haka freak, so I'm not gonna. And I've
Yeah,
just been
okay.
thinking, sorry, and
Yeah.
I've just been like thinking of the wider theme of sovereignty and self-determination.
Yes.
So I'll come back to that later and
Yeah.
leave the haka discourse to you and
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was one thing that was really amazing, Bianca, is the protest that you were involved with organising, Toitu Te Aroha, was kind of the first time we had seen more kind of conservative elements of Māori society actually coming out in opposition, or even just, to Pāti Māori, for example, coming out and vocally opposing the tactics used by Destiny Church. Prior to that, the leader of the Māori party had actually kind of sung their praises, because they also do like social services and these types of things. Of course, I mean, this is something that will be familiar to people.
And this was
within your
not this current lot, right? Was that a leader of Te Pāti Māori before this current?
Oh, yeah, Tari and Studia, like a long time ago. You know, they were praised, and their kind of ways in which that they punched down to the queer community was just overlooked as like, oh, well, they're Christians, like of course they're going to do that, and people just accepted them anyway. But so what we're seeing now is we are seeing some people who are strong within the Māori performing arts coming out and opposing this. We saw Eru Kapakingi, who is the leader of Toitu Te Tiriti, our biggest kind of, one of our big movements here. He kind of came out and he talked about like, this is not the appropriate use of haka. Like using the haka to punch down on people who are already marginalized and oppressed in society is absolutely not in line with how we have always used haka within our movements. But I think you're referring to an episode that happened, I think it was 1979. It was called He Taua. So Auckland University's engineering students, who back then were all white men usually, they had a tradition where every year they would like paint squiggles on their bodies and wear grass skirts and, protrude their tongues and dance around in the most uncoordinated fashion that I'm sure you can all imagine, trying to pretend to be savages, like native savages, like what they see when they see haka. And every year there were like people organizing against that, writing letters, asking nicely, and it didn't stop. And so one year, a group of Māori, many of whom would be involved with a group called Ngāti Maniapoto, which was kind of like, I guess, our equivalent, a Māori equivalent to like the Black Panther Party in a way, like a very different context, but they were a political force. So members who would be part of that group, people like Hilda Hawkyard Harawira, they went and opposed that and beat the shit out of them. And then it was interesting because when they were put on trial, it ended up being not a trial of these activists who went and beat up the Pākehās who had been mocking them for many, many years. But their actions were then put on trial because conservative Māori leadership came out in support of these young radicals and explained the offence that they had caused and how inappropriate that was. But really, we've seen haka used a lot in our movements. To begin with, it is often translated as like a war dance. We would use it in battle. And so that we still use it in battle today, but it's a different type of battle. And so to see a group like Destiny Church appropriate a haka that's of a particular tribal grouping whose permission they haven't sought to use the haka in this way, teach it to their membership, many of whom are not even Māori but may look Māori. We mock Brian Tamaki because he doesn't even get the words of the haka correct. It's the most common haka that he's using, but there are like thousands and thousands and thousands of haka that people know around the country. So to teach his membership to do this in order to harass communities who are already marginalised within our society is just a gross misuse of our haka.
Bianca, did you want to add anything to that before we get Sina on the sovereignty kick? It feels related. It feels related to because it's issues of like, again, the autonomy and people's self-determination and who has the ability to sort of steal things or claim things as their own is again how one uproots sovereignty. But if you have anything else before we give her the mic.
I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah, just what Arama has said, and it's just their desperate attempt to get validation from like I said, from fascists around the world and using our haka, and it's extremely embarrassing and harmful for us to see that go global and for people to think that there's a support for Zionism when overwhelmingly Māori stand with the people of Palestine and have been coming out week after week. And, if you ever see one of our Māori movements in a protest or a march, you will see, tens of thousands of Tino Rangatiratanga flags flying next to Palestine flags. There will not be a Zionist genocide flag in sight. So I guess that's my message to people who are watching this across the world, that if you see something like that come up, it's a very small fringe group that is weaponizing our culture in that kind of a way for their own benefit. I like the last comment that came through too.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes they just need the shit beat out of them.
Yeah, I mean, it worked, right? And sometimes, and we still have, one of the ones that was involved with that, his response on live television to this government was, the journalist said something to him and he just goes, we just need to just get the boys and send them over and give them a bloody good hiding. And, and everyone kind of freaked out, but it's like, well, this is, we've seen what happened, back in when they were doing that in the 70s and the harm that was creating. But we can joke about it now.
It's real. That's how you deal with things on the street. You fucking annoy motherfucker, you're going to get your ass kicked and then you're not going to do it again.
Yeah.
Well, the floor is yours, Sina, then to sort of. So I just want to say that Mahdis is in the chat, and the shout out to her for organizing an amazing talk. That this is where Stephen and I met Sina and got to be in community and speaking with her in Christchurch and learning about your history of struggle, Sina, and how you've been thinking about this. Like everybody has been saying here, you've been in this for a long time. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the struggle for sovereignty and like the changes. I mean, you spoke to some of the changes, the pressure points that are important now, things that have emerged that weren't, you know, that weren't quite on the scene back then, but now is a pressing issue. I think we've been talking about some of them, but I wonder if you could give folks a little bit more
I want to
context
thank
or.
our ancestors and our gods and our goddesses for leaving this for us. Yeah? For he whakaputanga and te tiriti, for embedding our inalienable right to be self-determining on our own lands from the basis and control of these lands from our culture, economics, everything. That's what they had tried to preserve for us. This is in my mind, sovereignty now is like a really messy, contested thing when capital is the only thing that is sovereign now in the world. Yeah? We're seeing this hyper imperialist moment where to countries like the States, the sovereignty of other countries doesn't mean shit. You can go in, you can assassinate, you can shit all over the so-called rule of international law. Where are all the people out on the street for Iran like Iraq? Fucking bulldoze Syria, Libya, Gaza. Here we go. Here we go. We keep on going. Is it because Arab people aren't what? White? Are we quite kind of used to 500 years of people of colour being destroyed and having everything extracted? Because that hasn't changed. So our sovereignty that we fight towards hangs on a really fragile thing. And I think the work that Arama and Bianca have done with our communities of people of colour, that is the heartbeat of our anti-imperialism as Māori and what we need in this world more than anything else. And Māoris forget that we weren't the only people that were colonised. Go and talk to that brother about their history with the British, and or that African brother, or this other brother, or these other people have been colonised by Americans. Identity politics has put us into a fucking cage of silos that we're not talking to each other about our human experience of being colonized, of having everything taken from us. But also, the flip side of that is our joint histories of resistance and struggle that we can encourage and feed ourselves on. Māori sovereignty built the design, the quest for our tino rangatira built a vibrant grassroots movement of academics, gang members, criminals, women, elders that pulled our people from assimilation and obscurity. But 30 years ago, we had our treaty rights incorporated into neoliberalism and cashed up into settlements. Here you go, you Maoris, don't get too uppity. We're going to incorporate you into capitalism. And it worked. It really took the fire, the grassroots fire and urgency out of our struggle, where a lot of us people, even I naively believed that if we fought for our sovereignty, that would mean our people would be living better lives than they are now. They wouldn't be in prison, they'd have a house, they'd have something to eat, really basic human things. But I let that naivety go because our sovereignty has become this like haloed, constitutional, hyper-legal thing that kind of sits up here. Yeah, where for me, sovereignty resides on the ground and with the people. Yeah, that's where our power is. That is where our sovereignty is. That's where our obligations are to the land and each other. So I'm really relishing that it took our comrade from overseas to let us have this kōrero, because let's be honest here, the kōrero that we're having now, our communities don't want it. Yeah? Our activists don't want it. Us talking Māori, I'm talking about the Māori space. Yeah, it's very quite gate kept and the discourse is kept in a little box. We don't really want to critique where we're going and what we're doing, but I think it's like really important. I remember my mentor, Sir Jackson, was absolutely hated, but he drove things forward. I'm at an age now where I don't really give a fuck what people think about me anymore. I really don't. The only opinions that matter to me are the people that I love and the people that love me. Yeah, everything else, we just need to keep our people in our hearts and our minds and our whenua and pushing for that. I'm all for channeling the spirit of two people I think are crucial in these modern times, Fred Hampton and George Jackson. Yeah. And if we can learn the lessons of those two great men and bring their learning and their love and their passion and their revolutionary hope into our communities, so we've got a chance of actually realising our mana mutahake and our independence and our sovereignty. Kia ora.
Yeah. I love also, Sina, some of the kōrero that you often share, and, you know, for our people to understand or have class consciousness, but also around our urban Māori as well. The reality is that around 85% of Māori don't live within our tribal territories. So, you know, people had to leave their homelands to kind of come to these city centres for employment and different things. But I always really appreciate,
you know, because that's the reality of our people, and it's always seen as being a deficit or a
yeah,
trauma.
you're not
People
enough if you're
our
living
elders
outside of your
come into
tribal
the
region.
cities and they replicated the hokaing in the cities with each other, with communities. Yes, our people are like really dynamic. Yes, we were pushed out of our tribal areas, but we recreated them with each other in the city.
Yeah.
That's the power of us.
Yeah, and there is huge power there. Huge power there within the connection and just the understanding, and the young ones, you know, that are getting drawn to like Kaiāwhina, and they have a place to put things into action. I kind of feel like it's this constant kind of praxis, you know, it's like you just have all of these different people from different backgrounds and kind of meeting together, with Kaiāwhina and building that just solid community that can't be broken, and that is just centered in care and protection of one another, and
Actually
the
living the
realization.
principles of mana motuhake iho. That's what your rōpū are actually doing, living it, doing it, breathing it, enacting it. It's not just theological, theoretical.
It's not just a solidarity statement.
No.
That's right. I mean, that's, I think, the through line. We started, and I mean, the through line across the board from the conversation we've been having are all the ways in which the praxis of community making, despite the pressures of white supremacy, despite the pressures of settler colonial fragmentation and atomization, right? I think if we're thinking about sovereignty, or what are the ways that folks can refuse all the logics that insist that people are dislocated, dispossessed, dismembered, and that the most vulnerable people in those communities, particularly those who are shepherds of the land, are the ones who are most targeted, because those are the people who show that every single day, right? And if people remain on the land in close connection with the land or with the water, that's a sort of every single day reminder to the settler that they're actually not, they don't belong there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for your viewers, Māori are quite a substantial portion of our population, partly because we have a very essentialist view of who we are. It's not the case that we have to, have a particular blood quantum or anything like that to be accepted as like tribal members. If you are descended from Māori, oftentimes you will identify as Māori. What happens every time that there's like a natural disaster or some kind of big emergency, it'll be Māori who are just ready to go, ready to respond, because of the strength of our communities are like multi-generational. Everyone's whānau, like the real connections there that we can see mobilized in an instant when needed. And those types of connections are very real. At the same time, part of what happened with this kind of neoliberal turn that Sina was talking about earlier, when there was this kind of process in place to recognise and reconcile and offer settlements to Māori, was also a time where there was this shift, well, people call it the cultural turn, where their analysis of their class consciousness kind of slipped away, and it became like a Māori culture versus Māori culture versus Pākehā white culture was Pākehā white culture was seen as the enemy, right? And although that very essentializing view means there's a lot of unity amongst Māori, sometimes it means we don't have a more there's not always an analysis that goes beyond colonialism. It doesn't always reach into racial capitalism, doesn't always reach into anti-imperialism as well.
Absolutely, and it ignores the overriding reality is that the vast majority of our people are working class.
Yeah.
That's the reality. I think that's been deliberate and conscious to split our Māori struggle.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to spring off and go on about the Māori bourgeoisie, but I think that was a deliberate decision. But, we're working against it. It's got no hope.
So I think sometimes we take too long to stand up against our own who are
you pay the
serving
price
interests
for doing
of the
it. Yeah, that's how our struggles have always been pushed forward. I mean, like Bianca's dad, sitting there, everybody hated them. You very well know what that was like. And that's how you catalyse and make things. That's when you learn that you've got, sorry for the want of the metaphor, balls to stand up for what you believe. Yeah, be strong about it. I'm glad we grew up before social media, so we're not too completely obsessed with being liked and all that kind of shit now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bianca was saying earlier about being principled, and I think this is part of it. Is that I think when I feel like settler colonialism, of course, but all systems of power exploit the vulnerabilities that are there and rely on the fact that a community that's under attack all the time might actually feel, because it's in good faith and they understand that they're under attack, they might not feel like it's safe to actually make these critiques in an outward way. And that's exploited by power, right? But I think part of what you all are describing is these movements that are now happening and that folks are taking up and the consciousness raising across the board are ones that say, no, actually, like this is Fanon 101, right? Is going back and saying the native bourgeoisie are agents of colonialism, have always been across the board. And that refusal has to extend to them, not because they are one of us, but because they uphold white supremacy and they uphold settler colonialism, right? Our comrade Dylan Rodriguez calls it multicultural white supremacy. White supremacy needs all of us to stabilize it, to ensure its longevity, to make sure that it's working. And so we can't be surprised that there are native bourgeoisie in all of our communities that actually play that role. But it seems like this intersectional anti-imperialist principled positions that you all are talking about, these movements, actually are contending with that in very real ways.
Yep.
Yeah, and of course, part of that as well is contending with Indigenous Zionists too. So we talked about Destiny Church and their support for Israel. We also have a group called the Indigenous Coalition for Israel in New Zealand as well, and they've been
nations voting for Israel in the United Nations.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of thing that can happen if you don't have a lens that takes on imperialism and racial capitalism as well, is that you can be easily fooled into supporting projects because they're branded as Indigenous in the way that Israel likes to brand itself. And then we have solidarity with groups that are really working against our own interests. So definitely you see that with Israel, but it's broader than just that as well, with the ways in which people apply I have a historical connection with the land and therefore I'm Indigenous to it, or supporting a movement that has some Indigenous people involved with it, even if that is being funded by the CIA or, like indigenizing these like imperialist projects. And so, yeah, it is I feel like that fundamentally threatens Indigenous rights because, you know, the concept itself is being torn apart at the seams by groups like Zionists claiming indigeneity and really capturing all the infrastructure that's supposed to uphold our rights. And so we've just seen like the breakdown of international law, and now we're seeing also the breakdown, I think, of Indigenous rights frameworks that just because of the internal contradictions within them just cannot hold together under these conditions. But if it's a framework that allows Zionism to capture it, then it's not something that's going to protect us either.
Mm.
Well, it feels like it because it also fundamentally relies on a legitimization of the structure before you even engage it, right? So this like sort of Indigenous rights is through a rights discourse that is actually perpetuated by state. I think this is part of what Sina, when we did our event, like fighting through the Constitution or fighting through sort of these types of rights are ways in which the state, the settler state, actually recoheres itself. Right. And part of the things that you all are laying out for us are all these ways in which communities are finding ways to demand their rights as Indigenous people, even if it's not through the channels that were like the proper channels that are laid out, that capture energy, that sort of curtail revolutionary struggles, that might look like they promise something, but what you all are saying, like every story of settler colonialism and the Indigenous people who are under its boot, is like every entreaty or seduction into that is one in which rights are actual rights, like you're saying, Arama, are ceded, right? Because settler colonialism at its heart is an annihilationist, eliminationist, white supremacist, expansionist project. And whatever rights are granted through that are fundamentally at odds, right? And that's what I'm hearing you all kind of lay out for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And here in Aotearoa, like the mechanism through which towards which all of our revolutionary potential has been directed is these treaty settlement processes, right, that they establish, and so our energy gets diverted into that space. And so the way that New Zealand kind of responded to international pressure to decolonize was through what I call treaty exceptionalism. So like in the US, you had the rebrand from a settler colony to what they would understand as like constitutional exceptionalism. In Canada or Australia, they had multiculturalism. And then in Aotearoa, we had treaty exceptionalism. And so, you know, we're not a settler colony. We have this treaty. We were settled peacefully. You know, this is the type of propaganda, this is the type of national narrative that you hear. And so, yeah, all of the energies get directed towards that. And of course, everything's done on the Crown's terms. And so, yeah, that's kind of directed energy away from actually transforming the system itself into just kind of fighting on the grounds that you don't control. And so, yeah, I think that over the last few years, we have seen more of that kind of understanding how all of these pieces fit together. People on the ground in struggle. Kaiāwhina, the group that we're part of, has been at the intersection of lots of different movements. And, you know, when you have, I mean, maybe your soundy, maybe your guy with the van or something, you might see him at a lot of the different movements, but Kaiāwhina is certainly something that's been one of the few groups that kind of are able to move across different movements in that way and bring the kind of, I guess, institutional knowledge or just like shared knowledge that we have and support and care across these different movements, and has enabled, I think, some people who've been on the ground at these different events to kind of gain that understanding and how these things kind of connect together. You know, recently there was an anti-war meeting that happened in Auckland, and 100 pro-regime change Iranians and Zionists turned out to counter-protest a meeting about an anti-war meeting. And some of the people that we organize with, they were like, oh, hey, there's a lot of disagreement within the Iranian community. These are the types of things that we're seeing them in real time kind of grapple with. But they only needed to kind of look outside and see all the Zio flags to kind of understand, okay, we see that these things are connected and where we're positioned in relation to that, So, yeah, I'm hoping to see more of that kind of clarity emerge and kind of doing away with the identity politics and the fetishization you see that the settler state allows of Indigenous people to kind of capture our movements, and funneling that towards more revolutionary agendas that are not just about brown capitalism, but are about transforming society more fundamentally.
Yeah, and I was just kind of reflecting on when I first heard you speak, Lara, which was at the People's Conference for Palestine in Detroit, and I was blown away by your kōrero, and particularly around just that clarity, or that militant clarity, I think it was, that you described it as, and reflecting on some of the things that have just been shared. And capitalism and the government, their aim is to absolutely exhaust us, and if we allow them to, it does, and we don't have a choice about living under capitalism at the moment, and so we have to participate in some form. But there is this decision that we can also come to where we're not going to let it exhaust us. And I see some of our great leaders allowing it to exhaust not only us individually, but our entire communities, by believing that all of our energy needs to be funneled back to, directly countering or challenging what the government is doing. And while, we've been, my entire life, for generations now, we've been experiencing this with different legislation, always designed to keep the boot on the neck and to keep us down. But we know what the response is, right, within that system. So we know, we got to get our people to vote, all the things, you can write a submission, do all of this, but this constant kind of taking our attention away from what we can do together and build together is so deeply harmful. And when we see leaders within our community with a full focus on trying to divert people's full attention to that, I feel is just incredibly counter to what we, particularly those of us that are organizing on the ground, are doing, and what we can see in terms of our potential moving forward. So the ability, or the organizing that I'm seeing, has that clarity kind of forefront, in that in this moment, we are not being called on to just simply counter what the government is doing. We are being called on being with and standing with and caring for our communities in place as best as we can in this moment, and building as much power as we can, so that we can very clearly see the future, particularly for Māori, but also for other people in this country as well. So that's around, the growing of our kai. Our people are incredible gardeners. We see it even just here on this little motu that we're on. The ability to feed each other, the manaakitanga that Arama touched on earlier. If there's a big emergency, extreme weather event, it's always our people that come out, because we know how to manaaki and care for people. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're someone in need, then you will have shelter over your head. You will have kai, you will have warmth, and you will have shelter. That's just an automatic thing, and that has always been taken advantage of since the arrival of the settlers into this country. And so I think that is where I draw on, particularly the kōrero that you shared in Detroit, because sometimes if I ever feel like that diversion is trying to be played on me, I bring it back to that kōrero, and I'm like, no, I have clarity in this moment. And that's what I wish that more of our people could understand and engage with, when the purpose of the system is to exhaust us, to wear us down, to tire us out. And right now we need to be taking care of ourselves, taking care of each other, our energy levels, our clarity of thinking, and the direction that we're heading in, and that we are the majority. We have the power to create the future that we need, and the future that we're bringing into realization. And so yeah, I just really want to mahi to you to not only what you shared in Detroit, but what you shared, you know, here in Aotearoa with those that were in the room, and how that is really playing such an integral part, I know, not only for myself, but for others with the work that we are doing. So yeah, thank you so much to you and to Stephen, yeah, for all of that rich kōrero that's inspiring our movement here in Aotearoa, inspiring our organising. And the
all
ripple
love and
effect of it.
solidarity. All love and solidarity to you all. You know it. You know it. We need, I mean, this is the thing, is I always say in locked arms, because the powers that are trying to fuck with our mind are part of a particular class. They all share the same class, and they all share the same goals of plunder, exploitation, coercion, and domination. And that's, you know, so our links to each other, talk about clarity. It feels so much more clear why our links with each other are so important in the face of the ferocity of this class that has its own links with each other, right? So I have so much respect and admiration for you all, and the hospitality that we both felt being there. But as we sort of work towards winding down, any final things all of you have to share? I mean, my heart feels so full, recommitted to the struggle alongside you all, comrades. But anything you'd leave our listeners with, anything you want folks to know, where we can plug in, how we can help in the struggle against the ongoing ravages of settler colonialism, particularly in Aotearoa, but certainly in global solidarity networks for anti-imperialism.
I think if it's okay, I'll maybe go first. But yeah, the moment that we're in here in Aotearoa, I think Arama said it really well just before, where, you know, it pales in comparison to, you know, what people are facing in other parts of the world. But for us here, and the danger of our government aligning so closely with the US and Israel, takes us further away from the realization of our own liberation here. And so understanding Western imperialism and the knowledge or the understanding of it, particularly for our young people, because of what they've been seeing in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Iran, what's happening now, and joining all of that together, connecting it to what we are experiencing here in Aotearoa, seeing ICE, you know, what's happening with the immigrant population over in the US and the different tactics that they're using. And essentially, you know, now you've got these white supremacists and Proud Boys, but now they're literally getting paid and they have jobs to go and do this armed out on the streets. And then looking at how things are changing here in terms of looking at ramping up repression, and also the move on orders for our most vulnerable, for our street whānau. And we are really seeing that what's happening globally, and particularly coming out of the US and Israel, is having an impact on us here, and that we need to stand firm, not only in our movement here for our realization of mana motuhake e tino rangatiratanga, but that we also need to be very, very clear as a nation that we are anti-war, and that we are going to stand up, and we are going to make sure that we maintain our position here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, as having a progressive, independent foreign policy, that we will not allow the government to align with the US and with Israel. We can see the war crimes, we can see the genocide, we can see the propaganda and the lies and the absolute desperation of empire to have any legitimacy through the extreme violence that they, you know, it's on full display with no strategy, the most ridiculous assassination, invasion, bombing that is just being laid bare for the whole world to see how idiotic and how extremely violent it is, because they are so incredibly desperate. And just because we are down here at the bottom of the South Pacific does not mean that we are directly being impacted as Indigenous peoples here in Aotearoa and throughout the Pacific. And if we don't unite with our broader population, with the majority of people in this country, then we are going to be an extreme danger the closer we get to this idiotic and violent so-called leadership that we are seeing play out at the moment, particularly in the US. So yeah, please remember us. Please remember that we are in solidarity here. We're fighting our own struggle for the realization of our sovereignty that we never ceded, and that we stand with we stand with the resistance. We see the resistance, and we acknowledge the martyrs who are paving the way to a better world, not only for the people whose blood has been shed, but the people here in Aotearoa, Indigenous people worldwide. And we will do our part here. We will do our part in building our movement and holding our so-called leaders accountable here, to maintain that position of peace and that position of remaining independent from Western imperial violence.
And I'll just, I don't want to follow that, but I'll just take the moment. And I know that, it's always wise to give the last word to Sina, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of reiterate the sentiments expressed by Sina and Bianca to the families who lost loved ones in the Christchurch terrorist shooting, and to acknowledge the violence that's currently being dealt to the population of West Papua, the Indigenous population there. Our liberation runs through West Papua as people from Aotearoa, and also we've seen that it runs through Palestine also. And so just want to give my full solidarity to Palestinian people, to our whānau in Sudan as well, to people in Lebanon and Iran who are being bombed also. And yeah, wonderful to be in conversation with you all. And Sina, I'll hand it over to you.
Always everything with and for the people. Everything that we have. I'm so excited. This korero has been really heartwarming, because I'm becoming a bit probably too cynical and trollish in my older age. So thank you, comrades, for and the refocus, because we need each other going forward. Yeah, we can make a revolution. We can live a revolution. We need to be more serious about giving people a political education that's not from TikTok. And I'm sorry, young people, but that means you've got to read some books and some pamphlets, so we can clearly gain that clarity of understanding exactly the moment that we're in, and then for us to collectively come together about what we're going to do and how we're going to change it, to build those bridges of solidarity between each other, between Indigenous people, between working class people, between people of the global south, because we are the global majority. We have no hope of overturning capital if we don't get our asses together and get organised. It's all of fucking nothing. The right have been planning this for generations, while the left take each other out with fucking identity politics. We've got no more fucking time to lose. Yeah, we need each other. It's on, and I think we're ready for it. Love your parents, your grandparents if they're still alive. Look after your neighbours. Get your ass moving if you can. And go to the gym and get strong, because it's on and we're going to win.
Fuck yes, we are winning.
Destroy your enemies, tend to your communities.
There you go.
That's what we all need to focus on. The enemy has never been clearer. They are in plain sight. There's no way that we need to be looking at throwing water on anyone else's fire that's on our side. We need to stay focused on the enemy, and we need to unite. Doesn't mean we all need to organize together, but we all have the common enemy, and that's what should unite us. And we need to be very clear about that. It's never been clearer here with our government, or what's been happening globally, or with the climate crisis. So yeah, destroy your enemies and tend to your communities. And keep each other safe.
That's right.
Love each other.
Do a kissing. Oh, thank you so much, comrades. I can't thank you enough. You know, my heart is with you. And when I can, my body's with you too. So,
Yes.
solidarity
We'll see you
always.
again.
Yes, we'll see you again so soon. Thank you, everybody in the chat, as always, and more soon.
Ka kite. See you.
Ka kite.
Thank you.
Bye.